come one with an intention or being open to listening first and not saying, not coming in like you have all the answers, but to be open to listening and being part of what it is, the design, where the community members are sharing what it is that they are experiencing and taking that at face value and not trying to diminish or say, well, or, doubt what it is that they're saying and reporting. And just know that, keep that intention there, that good intention. And I guarantee that, it will be accepted in various movements and communities. This is a picture of the EJ Center that we said the settlement money that we were able to direct towards. You see, this building needs a lot of love, right? But this building is going to be the future center where we have that hub to be able to dissect more of the research, to look at do some of the cold strip sampling, look and identify and go through some of the air quality data reports that the monitors are picking up. So we have really high hopes for this center and are actively raising capital to be able to rebuild this facility. That is all. That concludes our presentation. Here is our website. You can follow us on Twitter at Baltimore South. Please join our mailing list. And now I think we'll go to Nikki, right? So how do we stop the presentation for the? Yes, please.
I think I might need to. Could I get the screen share capacity somehow? It's disabled. I think someone just needs to turn it over. Okay, well, that's happening.
The AV person is working on it now.
Okay, sounds good. I just want to carry on this theme of how and in what ways communities can define the kinds of questions they want to ask, and research models can essentially be by and for communities. So I think that's an important trend that Shoshanda and Melanie have been articulating, and it's been steeped in the history. So I teach anthropology. There's a class here of environmental justice, juniors, seniors studying, thinking about this, and also since really Free Your Voice and some of the founding have been involved in the organizing. Great. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the partnership that we've been able to build. If I get that. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the partner. Is it possible to share my screen now? Yes. Okay, great. So we have been using a model of participatory action research, and now I think folks will be able to see much more clearly sort of the ways in which we've been thinking about some of these kinds of questions. So I'm sure folks in the audience was able to see sort of the communities, right? We have been since 2015 working inside Benjamin Franklin High School, which is the local high school that pulls from all of these 6 South Baltimore communities. why justice, or the various ways Greg talked about kind of pushing for policy or legislation, is important. So they created the survey, they conducted the survey, they coded the data, and then they presented it at the end of the semester. And the empowerment and the process that students go through is really powerful to watch, because they're turned from kind of passively listening to an instructor in high school where it's rote memorization into active learners, right? And active participants in a movement. And so many of the youth from the high school class who you'll hear on Saturday presenting are actually now organizing with the South Baltimore Community Land Trust. So these are just some of the air monitors that were a part of the class in the spring. And this was their final presentation. And in order to give some time at the end here, I think I will leave it at that so that Marvin and others have a chance to speak. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. My name is Christina Delgado. I'm an artist and educator and community organizer. A lot of my work has been focused in Northeast Baltimore, but recently I began a position at the Greater Baybrook Alliance, which is a community development corporation in South Baltimore, as the director of community engagement. Meredith Shakin, who is the executive director of the organization, was actually supposed to speak today, and she asked if I could fill in. And so I'm going to do my best to share the information around what the organization is doing towards environmental justice and advocacy. So again, when Meredith asked me to do this talk, I decided to pull a lot of the information from a op-ed that she and also the executive director of the Dundalk Renaissance, Tasha Resham James, wrote for the Baltimore Sun in July of this year. So as you all know, the Port of Baltimore is $1 billion economic engine for the Maryland economy. Recent investments in the dredging and the harbor and expanding the infrastructure around the port means that bigger ships can dock before being carried by truck and rail throughout the United States, delivering everything from automobiles to Amazon household products. But it has come at a cost to the port's surrounding communities, as the speakers before me have mentioned. Our community is surrounded by heavy industry. Most of the land along the waterfront owned by the Port of Baltimore businesses associated with the port. Truck routes drive right through our main streets to minimize their driving time from industry to highway or other access points. So of course, our historic Black and Brown communities and neighborhoods around the port experience increased noise and air pollution from truck traffic, reducing overall quality of life in these communities, as conversations have been mentioned before. The average annual daily traffic is 7,492 trips, meaning that all the cars, trucks, pedestrian bikes, and etc. that travel on Pennington Avenue is 7,492 on average per day. And 15% of that is truck traffic. A typical residential neighborhood is 2% or lower. So President Biden's Justice 40 initiative is a once in a generation opportunity that stipulates that 40% of all federal grants need to be allocated to environmental justice initiatives to address issues like pollution, clean transit, and climate change resiliency in neighborhoods just like those in South Baltimore. And funds are connected to the federal grants of the Port of Baltimore are already that they're already applying for. So these grant proposals receive additional points for mitigation projects in EJ communities. So this will help them to be more competitive. One immediate proposal, which involves rerouting truck traffic through Curtis Bay, also has industry and community support. and would meet this idea around the Justice 40 grants. So one of these ideas is 2 parallel streets in Curtis Bay are currently both one-way roads, one going into and one going away from the industrial area. By converting them to 2-way roads and dedicating the one more deeply embedded in the community to local traffic and the one closer to the industry to truck traffic, pedestrians and trucks don't need to compete against each other. The local traffic street, Pennington Avenue, can also have more trees, pedestrian crosswalks, and outdoor seating at restaurants. The truck route, Curtis Avenue, can be streamlined for traffic flow. It's better and safer for everyone, minimizing noise, pollution, and accidents. Projects to revise port trucking routes that redirect traffic away from low-income neighborhoods and reduce harmful pollution are a logical first step. These projects would not only cut drayage truck traffic and emissions, but would also help to improve traffic safety and enhance economic development in port adjacent communities. Another way that GBA is working to lead through environmental justice is through our environmental justice organizer. We are working with other local environmental groups, local farms, community partners, and resident leaders to restore the land and air in the northern Chesapeake Bay watershed, which is Baybrook Peninsula, Curtis Bay, and Brooklyn Park of Maryland, while also building leadership and stewardship in our local parks. And so our environmental justice organizer just recently had a Friends of the Parks mixer at Masonville Cove, which is the nation's first urban wildlife refuge partnership. The goal was to raise awareness of the refuge, encourage residents and community partnership, and provide a space to generate ideas for future programming engagement at Masonville Cove. We have upcoming cleanup. So our EJ team has partnered with a local community member who has been engaging people at a local homeless encampment to employ them through cleanup initiatives and providing resources to this particular community. This cleanup and planting would provide stipend pay to those that participate, and then also engaging the community using Baybrook Park as an access point. And so, by obviously understanding the significance of sustainability, it's important for us to leverage our resources and access to build awareness and promote active change for those that can't and don't know how. Thank you so much.
Excellent, excellent. Let's give it up for our environmental justice panelists who presented so far. Let's give them a bunch of finger snaps. Want to just say good afternoon and greetings. I apologize for not being able to be there with you in person. I'm coming down with something, and my only intentional thing that I want you to catch from me is compost fever. I would like to give some compost love to our panelists, especially the South Baltimore Land Trust community family, which I have the amazing opportunity to work with on a daily basis. Like to give a big shout out to Carlos and Tark and Tasia, who had an opportunity to come this summer and set up an air quality monitor at the Wakanda of South Baltimore, and they participated in a compost one-on-one workshop where Miss Nicole made sure that all of the youth got buckets and they collected their compost, because if you teach youth to compost when they're young, they will always compost. So I'm the anchor man for this event, so I need a little energy for you guys. So before I get started, I'm going to share one of my pieces. As Shoshonda say, we use art to be able to spread our message of environmental justice and environmental injustice that's happening in South Baltimore. And this piece is simply titled, "Let's Take a Stand for Compost." It's an environmental injustice when it happens to just us. I'm gonna say that again. It's an environmental injustice when it happens to just us. Pardon me, I was choking on the coal dust. Right where our children attempt to play, the time for change is a must. Marvin, what you making a big deal for? What's the fuss? You son of a gun, you almost made me cuss. You'll let our babies die to fatten your pockets till they bust. You'll kill us all for the money that you lust. We don't have to burn or bury our organic material. It's time to compost and adjust. I will not stop until I see the incinerator raised and crumbled in the dust. Let's take a stand for compost to make South Baltimore a better place for all of us. All right, let's get to it. Once again, my name is Marvin Hayes, and I'm the program manager for the Baltimore Compost Collective. We are a youth-led food scrap collection service, and we serve the amazing garden, Filbert Street Garden, which I love to call the Wakanda of South Baltimore, due to one of my favorite quotes from the Black Panther movie, "In times of crisis, while the foolish build barriers, the wise build bridges." And we are the bridge for that neighborhood to address several environmental injustice issues that's happening and the food desert and food apartheid issue that we have. We provide soil enhancer for about 47 raised beds at Filbert Street Garden. So we collect from about 15 different neighborhoods in Baltimore City, and we train youth from the local high school. I want to give up to all the alumni and current members of Ben Franklin High School, where all my youth have come from. We train them in small scale composting. They collect those materials, organic materials, because we're going to learn not to call that waste, because I don't waste anything. I turn that organic material into soil enhancer, black gold, for residents to be able to grow their own food. So we're going to always remember to call that, because we're learning organic material. We also fight the environmental injustice through the youth. We try to inspire the youth to be the next environmental justice leaders for Baltimore City, and the youth to take this movement to the next step. A lot of times we make decisions that impact youth's life, but we never bring them to the table. So I know Baltimore Compost Collective, South Baltimore Land Trust, and several other environmental justice in the environmental justice community are doing that, putting our youth in positions and teaching them how to go about fighting for their communities and educating their peers about where their trash goes, what happens to it when it gets there, and how it affects their community. My goal is to retire in 10 more years to my big man tiny house and my rescue dog and my composable toilet and my garden. So it's my job to pass this torch on to the young people in our community. We, along with collecting compost and putting the compost through a process, adding the carbon-rich material, the nitrogen-rich material, water and air to make that black gold. We also provide our youth with, we put our youth through a process. Sometime when you open up your compost bin, you smell that organic funk that greets you when you first come in. But once you put that carbon-rich material, you don't have that. And once you put it through that 4-month process, because I'm going to say this again, because it's a lot of greenwashing going on, you can't do composting in one day. Bresco is trying to do a composting program where they have this magic machine that can compost in an hour, and you can call an Uber driver and a Lyft driver to come pick that up. But I want to educate you. That's like comparing a French fry to a potato. You can't do something in 4 months that takes 4 months and do it in a day. So we provide the residents with this organic material, and we put our youth through a process. Sometimes our youth come to us, they don't know how to do public speaking. A lot of times we are profiled in the communities that we serve because we don't look like the people who live in that area. So I've always been taught to turn a positive into a negative. So when people are stirring and profiling us, I simply just worked with the youth and told them to ask them, do you compost? And to give them their elevator speech and tell them why it's important to compost. Once again, where their trash goes, what happens to it when it gets to its final destination, and how it affects. So we started out with 5 residents. Now we're serving 300, over 350 residents who are diverting their materials from being burnt or buried. Amazing, amazing. We are diverting about 1,500 to 2,000 pounds on a weekly basis. On Saturdays and Sundays, me and my youth composter, Mr. Kenneth Moss, who's been working with me since he's been 15 years old, has not missed a day or been late, and is dedicated and committed to picking up food scraps. I don't know many 20-year-olds who wake up on Sunday morning at 6:30 in the morning to go out and pick up compost to bring back to his community garden where he learned to grow his first tomato. So please follow Kenneth Moss. He started his own business from skills that he learned from the Baltimore Compost Collective, which is Kenneth Captures. Please check out some of his photography, his amazing artwork. He has ambitions of being a National Geographic photographer. And taking pictures of soil all around the world. And I just want to piggyback on something that Ms. Mel said. The mass shooting in Brooklyn has affected us tremendously. I would have lost my youth composter if he wouldn't have went in the phone into the house. He lives right in back of where the incident happened. And if he wouldn't have went in the phone to charge his phone up, if he wouldn't have went in the house. So we have to treat Baltimore as if it's one Baltimore and take care of every community as if it's one Baltimore. Recently, his nephew, my little composter in training, Eli, was in a lockdown at his school because it was just shooting right outside of his school, right in South Baltimore. So we got to do better, guys. As I said to you early, I have compost fever. I'm a long hauler of compost fever. So we have done an amazing job of spreading compost fever through the variant of education. So we work with the Office of Sustainability, Institute for Local Self-Reliance, Rockefeller Foundation to provide composting collection services and set up 3-bin systems and a bunch of our community farms. So we work with Plantation Farm, Strength to Love Farm, Hidden Harvest, a number of gardens, and we also work with DPW. DPW is catching compost fever. Now DPW has drop-off sites where you can drop off your compost at any of the DPW sites. You can freeze your compost overnight if you're concerned with the smell. Right now, the fall is giving us amazing leaves. Once you put that carbon-rich material over there, it'll stop any smell or any flies or anything that you have. So we're blessed also with DPW. In October, if you go to the Baltimore Compost Collective website or to my Instagram page or to the DPW Growth Center website, you can come to the Wakanda of South Baltimore, Filbert Street Garden to attend a home composting workshop where we will give you the best practices so you don't have urban rabbits, which are myths when you do compost the wrong way, and you won't have odors. Anybody that don't know what a urban rabbit is, it's a Baltimore City rat. So we give you the best tools to put in your compost toolbox so you don't have to deal with those. We have drop-off sites at the Govins Market. Govins community is also dealing with another type of incinerator. They're trying to stop people from crematory from going up in Govins. So we're fighting incineration in all different ways. You also can drop off at the farmers market at Jones Falls Expressway and at Waverly's Expressway. So we are creating an inclusive composting table for Baltimore City, giving residents, regardless to their financial situation. And I'm currently getting ready to launch drop-off sites at Cherry Hill and Lakeland and Curtis Bay for our residents who can't afford to go to a drop-off site, who can't don't have access to a local community garden. So Baltimore Compost Collective, we're committed to making sure composting is accessible to the city. If you want to bring your groups in, as I told you, Ms. Nicole brought the students. Every student that has been in Free My Voice have been to the Baltimore Compost Collective to learn about composting and went through the compost one-on-one training, which is this soil rebuilder program where we train the trainer. So I thank you for this opportunity. I want you to remember the Baltimore Compost Collectives campaign. Compost, learn so you don't have to burn. Starve the incinerator, feed the soil, feed the community. Thank you. Wakanda forever. Have a great day.
All right, we've heard some really exciting work taking place in Baltimore. So we have about 5 minutes for questions. I'm sure you all have questions. Or you just hungry? You want to, where's the mic? Okay.
We lost audio online.
Uh, can you hear now?
Yes.
Hello.
The question, the question was in regards to if we've been following the passive bill, and have not, but I know some of our architects have been, and I need to follow up with them to see clearly where it is. With as far as some of the federal rebates and programs, what we need to think about is the equity behind them all. So with the bills and different things, if it's still inaccessible for groups like ours, nonprofits, and other smaller groups that are just starting and doing development, then who is it really benefiting? It's going again to the people that can afford it and can access that. So that's one thing that I would love to see, and I'm not sure. I can't speak to what's in the bill or anything like that. But if there is not an equitable component on making sure that groups like ours that may not have that unlimited capital to be able to afford these rebates, we need the money up front, right? And we need to get access up front because we don't have those resources to be able to go out there and spend money first to then get reimbursed, right?
And I think we would rather, I think your last question was around staying with the home. I think we prefer to stay with the home because we're trying to actually build the community and make the community more sustainable. If it's just that, then it follows the person, which is what we're trying to actually not do. We want to keep it in the home to keep Curtis Bay affordable for residents.
The last thing I would add is just ensure doing the due diligence to ensure that there's nothing that is unintentionally biasing the legislation against community land trust and shared equity models, which a huge learning curve at the Baltimore City level is just what's a land trust? How does the shared equity model work? And are there things you wouldn't even think of that might be disqualifying a land trust? It's very widespread in the mortgage market to be able to reduce those barriers. And so just in any legislation, and Grounded Solutions Network is sort of the national entity that does a great job of trying to make sure that those barriers aren't there, but it's always a matter of making sure.
I just want to add one last thing too. The land community land trust movement started as a civil rights response in Albany, Georgia. Black farmers, they were retaliated against after voting, and all their farms and homes were bulldozed. And they eventually won a lawsuit and now own a plantation in Albany. I invite you all to look it up. New Communities, CLT, New Communities CLT in Albany, Georgia, and it's absolutely amazing. So sticking with those roots and understanding where this movement really started, and for the people truly impacted and truly affected overall.
All right. Unfortunately, we don't have time for any other questions. Unless there's a burning question. Hmm? You okay? Okay, so I did have a question. I'm just wondering how that you get started as a high school student.
I think getting started as a high school student, I think that question always comes up. I was gonna see if it slide by, but we here. But I think getting involved as a high school student is just having a lot of high schoolers think about this stuff, right? I think it's just not actually like it's not really space for them to actually talk about it. And so I think a lot of high schoolers are seeing this. They walk past it every day in their communities, and they are trying to think about how do they make change. I think having that support from teachers, having that support from people, mentors that came in your life that was just able to like mentor that spirit to say keep going and encouraging that spirit rather than dismissing it. I think you'll see a lot of high schoolers get involved because I think it's just the spirit of like they have a lot to say already. They have creative spirits, and I think now they are not accepting no. And so I think they're really intelligent, and I think they just need the space to not just be at the table, but actually be making decisions at the table, and not in this passive way of like listening to just because I'm an adult, I'm wiser than you, because that's just not always true. So I think it just needs the space being built in those different places.
Any other quick questions? Mhm.
Thank you. I live in a community that is facing a new incinerator that is going to burn hazardous waste, so toxic chemicals. The facility already practices open burning, so we obviously are trying to stop that first. But I wondered if you had any advice for trying to educate a community about the harms of incineration, because our facility is parading this new incinerator as a positive thing for the community. However, we know that there are so many better alternatives. So my question is if you have any advice on how to work with your community about that.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, we would be totally willing to connect further after this. And even we've done this. We've met with folks in Saugus, Massachusetts, who are dealing with a incinerator even older than the one in Baltimore. And so a lot of it is, we met people in Puerto Rico that were facing the same incinerator company that was trying to build it in Baltimore. So realize you're not alone. And there's a lot of communities that unfortunately have to go through this. And then sharing lessons that have worked to actually convince legislators or policymakers who maybe aren't even approaching this rationally other than the contributions that they got. But we were up against a Governor O'Malley who was running for president on a green agenda, who was calling this incinerator the best thing, ever. It was, so even though it was importing garbage from New York, that wasn't even going to be destined. So it's a huge uphill battle if you have a system that's been skewed like that, and realize it's at the end of the day, it's about people power and mobilizing the community. And for us, that was a matter of getting past the point where it felt like it was hopeless to being able to build enough support and collectivity. That's really hard and labor intensive. But anyway, there are no shortcuts, but there's a shortcut in terms of realizing there's other people. And so I think.
Yeah, I would just add definitely let's connect, and we'll be right here, so you can definitely come and connect. I think the first one is like just getting simple wording, simple choices of language that could be shared through multiple people. That's easier to reach a lot of people when you're door knocking, right? So sharing that information. We used to say a few of them ourselves, just around like what the incinerator is going to be polluting, just to be the grabber to talk to people at the door. I think keep your energy up, because it's going to be hard. It's not easy, especially when you're probably in a community that deals with more than this, just an incinerator. And so you'll hear people say things like I said earlier, like this has happened before. This is going to keep happening, right? But you just got to keep fighting back. You got to keep knowing you're on the right side of it, and that there are alternatives. So when you go into talking with people, to say there is alternatives, right? And definitely connect with groups that's already doing this, so we can just share where we are. I mean, we don't have all the answers, but we can share where we are at, and helping with that. But
And I don't want to offend anybody, but be on the lookout for groups that do claim to have the solution to your community's problem, who aren't a part of your community, and who are promising to come in with some kind of like tech wonk solution, that there's just this magic bullet, and trust your instincts that that's probably not the case. So anyway, and that's more of a general comment.
Thank you. So let's give a big round of applause to all the speakers. Did you want to say something, Marvin?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say collaboration is a key. Currently, Baltimore is working with Detroit, who shut down one of the largest and oldest incinerators in the country. And we're working with them to help them create their community composting infrastructure. So me and Kenny just got back from training 30 youth in small scale composting. This is my full time traveling to Detroit to do training in turn, they're giving us tips on how they were able to shut down one of the oldest, largest incinerators in the country. So collaboration is the key. Continue to collaborate. And like Greg said, with good people.
Awesome. Thank you. So thank you, everyone. Lunch is in the ballroom.
Hold me down.
Be on the lookout coming up soon in October. Carlos and the youth team listen on NPR. I don't listen to NPR a lot, but on the Code Switch podcast, and then I think on the morning edition, there's going to be a feature on the youth citizen science work. So stay tuned for that.